My name is Copeland, and this started 3 years into what I believed was a serious relationship. Sebastian was sitting on our living room couch when everything changed. One leg crossed casually over the other, completely composed, as if he were explaining something obvious. "We're not engaged, Copeland," he said. "We're dating." I stood near the fireplace holding his tablet. On the screen was a conversation with someone saved as Liana W. Work. The message that had turned my stomach cold had arrived less than an hour earlier. "Can't stop thinking about last night. Your laugh is my new favorite sound. Counting the hours until Thursday. Don't tell the roommate." Roommate. That was apparently what I had become. The night before, Sebastian had told me he had a headache. I made him soup, brought it to bed, rubbed his temples, and kissed his forehead. While I was taking care of him, he had been smiling at messages from another woman. "Dating," I repeated. "Yes." Sebastian's tone was almost instructional. "We have no legal commitment. We're two independent people choosing to spend time together." 3 years. 3 years of choosing him every day. I had secretly been saving for a ring, a simple platinum band because Sebastian hated flashy jewelry. I had driven across the city at 2 in the morning when he got sick. I had built the bookshelves beside him because he wanted our apartment to feel more personal. I was his girlfriend, nurse, handyman, emotional support system, and apparently, when convenient, his roommate. "Who is Liana?" Sebastian sighed. "She's a colleague." That message doesn't sound professional. "She's more than that." At least he finally stopped lying. "She understands me," he continued. "She challenges me. And I don't. You're stable." The word should have sounded like a compliment. It didn't. "You maintain things," he said. "The bills get paid. The fridge stays full. Everything works." Maintain. Like I was household infrastructure. "So you're sleeping with her." Sebastian lifted his chin. "We're exploring a connection." I almost laughed. "A connection. Copeland, what if the ring never comes?" My heart tightened. He didn't know there was already one hidden in our bedroom closet. "I can't put my life on hold waiting for a promise," he continued. "When there's a ring, then exclusivity matters." I stared at him. "So loyalty starts after engagement?" "Basically." He shrugged. "Until then, we're free agents." That was the moment something inside me became completely clear. This wasn't a drunken mistake. Sebastian had built an entire philosophy to justify betrayal. Suddenly, the last 6 months rearranged themselves in my memory. The whispered phone calls, the late client dinners, the way every conversation somehow included, "Liana says." I thought she was a mentor. She was auditioning to replace me while I kept his life comfortable. I placed the tablet on the coffee table. "I understand." Sebastian looked surprised, then satisfied. "Good. I knew you'd be mature about this." He smiled slightly. "We don't have to change everything. We can just adjust the parameters." I said nothing. I walked into the bedroom. "Where are you going?" I opened the closet and pulled out my suitcase. Then I started packing. Sweaters, shoes, work clothes, documents. Sebastian followed me. "Copeland, seriously?" I ignored him. From the back of the closet, I removed a small lockbox. Inside was the ring, the one I had planned to give him during a trip 2 months later. I held it for a few seconds. This tiny object was supposedly the magical switch that would make Sebastian loyal. I slipped it into my suitcase. It wasn't his anymore. When I wheeled the suitcase toward the door, his confidence finally cracked. "What are you doing?" "Leaving." "You're overreacting." "No." I put my hand on the doorknob. "You explained your terms. I don't agree with them." His face hardened. "So you're throwing away 3 years?" "I believe loyalty comes before the ring." I looked directly at him. "You believe the ring creates loyalty." Silence. "There's no compromise between those two things." For the first time, Sebastian looked afraid. "So that's it?" "Yes." "You're just running away?" I opened the door. "No, I'm walking away." Then I stepped into the hallway. Goodbye, Sebastian. The door closed quietly behind me. He thought the argument was unfinished. I already knew the relationship was over. And neither of us could have imagined how brutally his theory about rings and loyalty would eventually be tested. That first night, I drove to a cheap extended stay hotel on the other side of the city. The room smelled like disinfectant and old air. I sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, waiting for devastation to arrive. Instead, I felt numb. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Sebastian, this is childish. Sebastian, we need to talk about the couch and TV. You can't just abandon your responsibilities. Sebastian, Copeland, call me. This isn't fair. I stared at the messages, the couch, the television. Apparently, once loyalty was removed from the relationship, all that remained was asset division. I blocked him. Then I blocked him on every social platform. It wasn't anger. It was hygiene. Over the next few weeks, I moved through life quietly. I rented a small furnished apartment and went to work every morning as if nothing had happened. I told only my closest friend, Dana, the basic truth. He was seeing someone else. He said loyalty didn't apply until engagement. So I left. Dana stared at me. He actually said that? Almost word for word. She shook her head. I'm impressed you didn't throw the tablet through a window. I didn't want revenge. And I meant it. I wanted distance. Still, glimpses of Sebastian's new life found their way to me. One mutual friend, Stacy, sent a long message. Copeland, I can't believe you gave up so easily. Sebastian is heartbroken. He's with Liana now, and honestly, she seems great for him. She's ambitious and exciting. Maybe you pushed him toward her by being so rigid. You should have fought for your relationship. I read it twice. Somehow, Sebastian had cheated, and I was now responsible for pushing him toward the woman he cheated with. I typed one response. I'm glad he's happy. Please don't contact me about him again. Then I blocked Stacy. A few days later, against my better judgment, I checked Sebastian's public profile. The first photograph showed him with Liana at a rooftop bar. He was laughing, leaning into her. The caption read, "When you stop settling for comfort and start choosing the spark." New energy. Know your worth, comfort. That was what 3 years of loyalty had become. The soup, the late-night pharmacy trips, the future I had been quietly saving for. Comfort. I closed the app, and surprisingly, I didn't feel jealous. I felt validated. Sebastian had shown me who he was. For once, I had believed him. So I started rebuilding. I ran in the mornings. I enrolled in a woodworking class at a community college because I wanted something that required patience and produced something real. I started reading again. Nothing dramatic happened. There was no cinematic transformation. I simply reconstructed myself piece by piece. 8 months after I left, Dana and I were having drinks when she pushed her phone across the table. You're not going to believe this. On the screen was Sebastian's engagement announcement. His hand rested dramatically against Liana's chest, showing off a large diamond ring. He looked triumphant. The caption was almost painfully predictable. When you know, you know. She didn't make me wait for maybe someday. She saw my worth and put a ring on it. Finally, real commitment. Forever. Power couple. I took a slow sip of my drink. Dana watched me carefully. You okay? Yeah. And I genuinely was. Sebastian had gotten exactly what he claimed he needed. The ring. The official promise. The contract that supposedly activated loyalty. Over the following months, occasional updates filtered through our former social circle. The wedding was going to be enormous. A destination vineyard, designer clothes, luxury flowers, professional photographers. Sebastian posted constantly about finally finding someone who understood commitment. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, things changed. I ran into one of Sebastian's former co-workers, Elise, at a hardware store. After awkward small talk, she lowered her voice. You hear about Sebastian? I've seen the engagement posts. It's not exactly perfect. I kept examining a package of sandpaper. How so? Liana's traveling constantly. Dubai, Singapore, last-minute client trips. Sebastian's been freaking out. I said nothing. Elena, well, Mason, his best friend, has basically been handling everything. Mason, Sebastian's closest friend since college, the best man. He's been calming Sebastian down, coordinating vendors, helping with the wedding. Sounds stressful. Elise nodded. You have no idea. Sebastian looks exhausted. I bought my sandpaper and went home. I didn't feel pleased. I didn't hope for disaster. But something about the pieces didn't fit. Then the week of the wedding arrived. Sebastian's constant social media updates suddenly stopped. So did Liana's. The entire wedding party went strangely silent. On Saturday night, my phone buzzed with a message from an unfamiliar number. Copeland, it's Ben. You need to know what happened. I almost deleted it. Then, the next message arrived. Liana left Sebastian at the altar. I stared at the screen. Another message. She's gone with Mason. They've apparently been together for months. And suddenly, Sebastian's theory about rings and loyalty was about to face the most brutal test imaginable. I read Ben's message twice. Liana left Sebastian at the altar. She's gone with Mason. They've apparently been together for months. For a few seconds, I simply stared at my phone. Then the entire scene assembled itself in my mind. The vineyard Sebastian had spent months showing off online, the expensive flowers, the designer suit, the rows of guests waiting beneath string lights and carefully arranged greenery, and Sebastian standing there with a ring that was supposed to guarantee loyalty. Except the woman wearing its matching promise wasn't coming. Ben sent another message. It's complete chaos. Liana sent a text to the wedding party, said she couldn't marry Sebastian because she realized Mason was the person she actually loved. I sat down. Another message followed. Apparently, they flew to Costa Rica this morning. Sebastian's parents are losing it. His mom is screaming at everyone. I've never seen anything like this. Costa Rica. Of all places. The country where Sebastian and I had once taken one of our happiest vacations. The irony was almost too precise. But the worst detail came last. Mason apparently told someone that Liana said Sebastian never really understood loyalty. She said Mason was the one who had actually been there for her. I stared at those words. Loyalty. The concept Sebastian had reduced to a contractual benefit activated by a ring had become the weapon used against him. He hadn't simply been cheated on. He had been abandoned publicly by his fiancée for his closest friend. I expected satisfaction, maybe even laughter. Instead, I felt something much quieter. Closure. I deleted Ben's messages, poured myself a glass of water, and stood near the window of my apartment. For the first time since leaving Sebastian, I thought about the ring I had once bought for him. The platinum band had been sold months earlier, the money paid for part of my woodworking course and some new furniture. Back then, Sebastian had treated a ring like a magical switch. Before the ring, loyalty optional. After the ring, commitment guaranteed. Now reality had tested his theory. It had failed spectacularly. 3 days later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I was in my workshop sanding the curved arm of a rocking chair I had been building. I answered without thinking. Silence. Then I heard someone breathe. Copeland. Sebastian. His voice barely sounded like him. Raw. Broken. I closed my eyes. Copeland. Please. I said nothing. In the background, I could hear loud music and glasses clinking. He sounded like he was somewhere public. She left me. Still, I said nothing. With Mason. His voice cracked. They were together for months. I ran my thumb over the edge of the unfinished chair. I found messages afterward. Everyone knew before I did. Some people at the wedding knew something was wrong. He started crying. Not quietly. The kind of broken, uneven sobbing that made words difficult. She left a text, Copeland. A text. On our wedding day. I listened. A year earlier, I would have rushed across the city if I heard him sounding like this. I would have brought food, held him, fixed whatever could be fixed. That reflex still existed somewhere inside me, but it no longer controlled me. You have to come get me, Sebastian said. I opened my eyes. What? I'm at the Rusty Anchor. You remember it? I did. Please, I can't go home. My parents keep calling. Everyone knows. I can't. I can't be alone tonight. There it was. Not can we talk? Not. I'm sorry for what I did to you. You have to come get me. As though the last year had been erased because his new life had collapsed. Copeland? I remained silent for another few seconds. Then I ended the call. No speech. No revenge. I blocked the number and returned to sanding the chair. Shush. 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 The quiet returned. For 1 week, that was the last I heard from him. Then, on a rainy Tuesday evening, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. Sebastian stood outside. His hair was wet. His jacket was soaked through, and he looked almost 10 years older than the man who had once sat confidently on our couch explaining why he didn't owe me loyalty. For an instant, the old instinct returned. Open the door. Let him inside. Give him a towel. Make coffee. Fix it. I acknowledged the feeling, then let it pass. I opened the door, but remained in the doorway. Sebastian? His eyes moved past me into the apartment, the finished bookshelves, the woodworking tools near the window, the life I had built without him. His expression changed. Copeland, I made a mistake. I said nothing. The biggest mistake of my life. Rainwater ran down his face. What we had was real. I understand that now. He swallowed. You were loyal without a ring. That sentence landed strangely, not because I had wanted to hear it, because once, I would have given anything for him to understand it. You loved me without a contract, he continued. And I treated that like it wasn't enough. I looked at him calmly. I'm sorry you're hurting. His eyes widened. That's it? Yes. Aren't you going to ask me inside? No. His face hardened slightly. It's pouring. I can see that. The desperation in his expression began turning into frustration. After everything Liana and Mason did to me, you can't even give me 10 minutes? I held his gaze. Sebastian had finally learned that a ring couldn't guarantee loyalty, but judging by the anger growing in his eyes, he still hadn't learned the second lesson. My compassion was not something he was automatically entitled to either. Sebastian stared at me from the rain-soaked hallway, his frustration beginning to replace the vulnerability he had arrived with. You owe me more than that, Copeland, he said. We had 3 years. There it was, the old entitlement. You owe me. I looked at the man standing on my doorstep and remembered another conversation in another apartment, when he had calmly explained exactly what he believed people owed each other. I don't owe you anything, Sebastian. His expression hardened. You were very clear about what was owed and when. He went silent. I'm sorry Liana hurt you. I'm sorry Mason betrayed you. But their choices don't reopen something you closed a year ago. Copeland, good night. I closed the door gently. I heard something on the other side. A curse, maybe a sob. Followed eventually by retreating footsteps. For several minutes, I simply stood there. Then I returned to the rocking chair I had been working on. Sebastian's attempts didn't stop immediately. A long email arrived several days later. It was filled with therapy language about childhood wounds, fear of abandonment, self-sabotage, and how he had pushed away the person who truly loved him. I deleted it after the first paragraph. Then came a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. I recycled it unopened. He tried different versions of himself. The broken victim. The enlightened man who had finally gone to therapy. The remorseful former boyfriend who now understood loyalty. None of it mattered, because underneath every version was the same expectation. He still believed understanding his mistake should somehow earn him access to me again. It didn't. By then, my life had changed in another way. I had started seeing someone. His name was Grant. He was a landscape architect I met through a professional project. Thoughtful and quietly funny, with a laugh that never sounded rehearsed. There was nothing dramatic about us. That was part of what I liked. Grant didn't talk about relationships like contracts or leverage. He didn't calculate whether commitment gave him enough benefits. Kindness was simply his default setting. A month after Sebastian appeared at my door, I stopped at the upscale grocery store near my office to buy ingredients for dinner. Grant was coming over. I was standing near the produce section, trying to decide which avocado was ripe enough, when I felt someone hovering behind me. Copeland. I knew the voice immediately. I turned. Sebastian stood beside the berry display. He looked better than he had at my apartment, but only superficially. His clothes were neat, his hair styled, yet exhaustion still lived behind his eyes. Sebastian, please. His voice was barely above a whisper. Just one coffee. 10 minutes. No. I need to explain. You already have. No, you don't understand. He stepped closer. I understand loyalty now. That sentence might once have moved me. Now it only made me tired. I understand what I threw away, he continued. It's all I think about. I placed the avocado in my basket. Sebastian watched me as if every ordinary movement were proof that my world continued without him. I heard about what happened with Liana and Mason, I said. Hope immediately appeared in his eyes. It was a nightmare. He spoke quickly now. The ring meant nothing to her. Nothing. We were engaged, Copeland. She promised me everything, and she still lied. I nodded. She didn't understand what that ring was supposed to mean. I looked at him. For a moment, I remembered the Sebastian from our old living room. Calm. Certain. Explaining that loyalty only became mandatory after someone placed a ring on his finger. And suddenly, the entire year folded into one simple truth. It's ironic, isn't it? He frowned. What? The ring. His face went still. I spoke quietly. I guess the ring didn't guarantee loyalty after all. For several seconds, Sebastian said nothing. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. Shopping carts rolled past. Somewhere nearby, a child was asking his mother for cereal, and Sebastian's entire expression collapsed. The philosophy he had once used to excuse his betrayal had finally been reflected back at him. No shouting was necessary, no revenge. The facts were enough. His eyes filled. Copeland. I gave him a small, polite nod. Take care of yourself, Sebastian. Then I turned my cart away. I walked toward the fresh herbs and wine aisle. I didn't look back. I was already thinking about dinner, about garlic and rosemary, about the way Grant smiled when he talked about his latest project, about how peaceful it felt to be with a man who understood that loyalty wasn't something activated by jewelry. Sebastian's world had once consumed almost all of my emotional energy. Now his chaos was simply noise somewhere behind me, and as I continued down that brightly lit aisle, I realized something I hadn't expected. I didn't feel victorious, because Sebastian had suffered the same betrayal he once justified against me. I felt free because his suffering no longer had anything to do with my happiness. The ring had failed him, but walking away had saved me. After that grocery store encounter, Sebastian finally disappeared from my life. No more calls from unknown numbers. No more letters. No more people contacting me on his behalf. Maybe he finally understood that there was nothing left to repair. Or maybe hearing his own philosophy reflected back at him had done what every argument before it failed to do. Either way, the silence stayed. And this time, it felt permanent. My relationship with Grant continued quietly. No games, no tests, no dramatic declarations designed for social media. We cooked dinner together. We argued over whether rosemary belonged in everything. We spent Sunday mornings walking through parks while Grant pointed out landscaping choices I would never have noticed on my own. One evening, while we were washing dishes, he looked at me and said, "You know what I like most about us?" "What?" "I never have to guess where I stand." That sentence stopped me. For 3 years with Sebastian, I had believed loyalty was something obvious between us. I had assumed that commitment existed because we were building a shared life. Sebastian believed differently. To him, everything before engagement had been provisional, flexible. negotiable. I used to wonder if I had been naive. Now I knew I hadn't been. I had simply trusted someone whose definition of commitment was incompatible with mine. That didn't make loyalty foolish. It made choosing the right person essential. I never forgot what Sebastian told me that night. I don't owe you loyalty until there's a ring. At the time, those words destroyed the future I thought I had. A year later, they became almost painfully ironic. He finally received the ring, the official commitment, the public promise. And none of it stopped Liana from betraying him with Mason. That was the lesson Sebastian had to learn the hardest possible way. A ring can symbolize loyalty. It cannot manufacture it. A wedding can celebrate commitment. It cannot create character. And a legal promise means very little when the person making it has already decided that honesty is optional. People sometimes ask whether I felt satisfaction when I heard Sebastian had been left at the altar. The answer is complicated. For a brief moment, yes, I recognized the symmetry. He had treated my loyalty as meaningless because there was no ring. Then someone treated his ring as meaningless because there was no loyalty. But satisfaction faded quickly. His humiliation didn't give me anything back. It didn't return the 3 years. It didn't erase the nights I questioned whether I had somehow failed. It didn't make the betrayal hurt less. What healed me was everything that came afterward. The mornings I started running. The workshop that smelled like fresh wood and sawdust. The first chair I finished with my own hands. The books I read because I wanted to. The apartment I filled with things chosen entirely by me. And eventually, Grant. Not because he rescued me. I didn't need rescuing by then. He simply met me at a point where I had already learned how to stand on my own. That mattered. Months later, Grant and I were sitting on my balcony after dinner when he noticed the rocking chair I had built. "You made that after the breakup, right?" "Yeah." He ran his hand along the wooden arm. "It's solid." I smiled. "It took forever." "Worth it?" I looked at the chair, then at the life surrounding it. Definitely. That was how rebuilding had worked. Slowly, quietly, without spectacle. The relationship with Sebastian ended in one night, but moving on took months of small decisions. Choosing not to check his social media, choosing not to answer calls, choosing not to defend myself to people who believed his version, choosing not to mistake his regret for change. Eventually, those decisions became a new life. I don't know where Sebastian is now. Last I heard, he had moved out of the apartment he once shared with Liana and had taken time away from dating. Maybe he finally learned something. Maybe he didn't. It isn't my concern anymore. I genuinely hope he becomes better. Not because I want him back. Because everyone deserves the chance to stop repeating their worst mistakes. But if he does change, someone else will benefit from that version of him. I won't. And I'm at peace with that. The old ring I once bought for Sebastian is long gone. Sometimes I think about how much meaning I had placed inside that little box. I thought it represented the next step in our future. Sebastian thought a ring was the beginning of obligation. We were both wrong in different ways. The ring was only a symbol. The real commitment existed, or didn't exist, long before anyone wore it. Grant understands that. So do I now. And whenever I remember Sebastian standing in that grocery store telling me that Liana's ring meant nothing, I don't feel anger anymore. I remember my answer. I guess the ring didn't guarantee loyalty after all. Then I remember walking away. Not toward revenge. Not toward triumph. Toward dinner with someone who had never once made me question whether loyalty needed paperwork to become real. That was the ending I actually needed. Not Sebastian's humiliation. My peace. The chapter closed there. And this time, I never reopened it.